Good?
We're good.
All right. Welcome back to the episode 3 of the Motley Crew podcast today. My name is Mike, and we have Dave and RB, or Rob, RB, government names, of course. We have an interesting topic today, specifically talking about the animals and whether or not we should bring them back if we have the ability to. So recently we read an article, and I think it was on the national park. You said, Dave? National park, they said they had the abilities to bring back wolves, and because they did so, they were able to save 3 species of animals from extinction. Am I correct on saying that?
Yeah, that's correct.
So I didn't actually read the whole article, but I know Dave did. Can we elaborate a little bit further on it?
Yeah, so I believe this was in Yellowstone National Park. So they basically reintroduced a species of wolves into the ecosystem, which pushed the deer off the land, allowed plants to regrow, which changed the entire ecosystem, allowed certain animals to repopulate certain areas. And they found that, I believe it was 2 or 3 years later, that the ecosystem was generally flourishing. Just a massive change from just a simple introduction of a new animal. So I believe that previously we had been discussing in the clinic that we are entering a new era of genetics where we're able to potentially bring back animals, maybe animals that we have wiped out ourselves from spreading and from deforestation. So that's kind of how this topic came to light, right? When we discussed that?
Right. So I remember us talking about this, and the stance that I had taken on it was that even if we had the ability to bring back these animals and put them into an environment, and as you said, the ecosystem is thriving, I don't necessarily think that the ecosystem was in harm's way to begin with. Also, I want to preface that I love animals. I love the environment. I'm just kind of talking about it from a moral standpoint, or lack thereof moral standpoint. Right. So if the ecosystem is currently adapted to, say, we have birds, wolves, and rats, or whatever's in the ecosystem, and we wipe out all the rats, then of course it will impact the rest of the ecosystem. However, after some time, we should reach some type of equilibrium where whichever animal just so happens to flourish best would continue to flourish. Now, this may come at the cost of maybe some particular species being extinct. However, I don't think it really matters that much, because if we talk about how natural evolution kind of occurs, animals that were more adapted to their environment were able to adapt better, and the animals that were not got wiped out. Now, to your point, you said, hey, should we do it if we wipe them out? Not necessarily from them not being adapting. It's just we wiped them out because we moved into the area. And I don't necessarily feel like there's a moral obligation to do so, because in doing so, my thought is, what's the point, right? Whether or not these animals are there or not, unless you're saying that it is causing the ecosystem to literally die, then I don't really see what the point is.
Well, first off, I think we're looking at it through the microscope a little bit here. You know, as conscious beings, being at the top of the food chain, essentially, or the food chain that we have recreated in our ecosystem today with our technology, we have the innate and unique ability to kind of cognitively perceive things around us. We know that certain animals are able to do that, right? Like dolphins have a limited ability to do that, right? There's other animals as well that none, jump into my head right now, but I know dolphins are one. We have the ability to really think critically. So if we have the ability to step in and say, hey, we were very short-sighted. We didn't know what we were doing. We created, a bunch of communities. We wiped out some land. We killed all these animals, and some of them are potentially extinct now. I believe we have a moral responsibility to step back in, if we have the ability, to bring these animals back, because these animals probably would not have been extinct had it not been for us.
Okay, so say you do bring back these animals. How many times has it happened within human history already where you're like, you know what, we're going to reintroduce this animal back into the environment, and it actually screws up the environment because that animal either becomes too dominant or they don't have natural predators. And I guess this would be more of a case of like a foreign species to a new environment. But even still, let's just say we bring back a existing animal to the environment. Who's to say that they wouldn't go extinct again?
You know, there's always that potential, and I think you've probably seen Jurassic Park one too many times, Mike. But you know, again, I understand what you're saying, but we can't really speculate because once we make a change in the environment, there's sort of a domino effect, right? So the perfect example would be bees, right? We know that it's not just as simple as if the bees were not here, we would not have bees. We understand that the bees have a dramatic impact on the environment. They play a strong role in pollination, and without bees, that would set off a tremendous domino effect, which could affect many things that we absolutely have no understanding of. I mean, it could ultimately have an effect on the climate. We really don't know that. But I'd be curious to see, as you said, with foreign animals into a new environment. I understand that a little bit, right? Because you have not made a physical change, right, to the ecosystem. This is an animal that has just changed geographic locations, right? But what I'm speaking more about is us eliminating animals from our ignorance, essentially.
But still, once again, right? So say we bring back these animals. Say I do bring them back, and then what? It's not like the environment prior to us making this particular animal extinct really changes that much because, as I said before, at some point, the animals that are still existing there will be able to find an equilibrium within the environment. So by me reintroducing the extinct animals, I get it from a moral standpoint, but then that's kind of the question that we get into, right? Is there really a moral responsibility? Just because you can, should you? Because we also see that oftentimes we can do things with good intentions, but it doesn't always work out that way. Namely, like maybe if we say that, social media is awesome because we can connect everybody, we have communication, everybody around the world can be adapted. Yeah, we have all these different complications coming up with different, social media. So likewise, if we are able to bring back animals from the extinct into reintroducing them environments, at what point can we go down the slippery slope and now we're modifying these animals just a little bit so that they can fare a little bit better so that they don't get wiped out? So now we're choosing which animals or choosing which traits that they have.
I mean, again, you've seen Jurassic Park too many times. I'd like to hear Rob's opinion on this as well.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, is this just an example of man just trying to impose his will where he actually can because of scientific advancement in the world? So you have an extinct animal through natural selection is really what we're looking at here, right? Because if we're supposedly at the top of the food chain with what it is that we're doing here on the planet, and then we decide as a species to deforest and then extinct this particular animal, then actually that's just the way that it goes. That's how it's gone for centuries before us. That's how it's going to go for centuries after us. So should we actually take a part of that plan and then say, okay, we're going to reintroduce this into society or reintroduce this to the world simply because we can? Is that the morally just thing to do? Is it a slippery slope that we're going down? What's next? Genetic modification of humans just because we can? We say now we don't want this particular genetic trait involved in the human species anymore. So then we kind of tap that out and say, well, since we can control this and control that, and then we can go ahead and control that as well. So yes, we might have the ability to do these things in the future from genetic manipulation, but should we do it from a moral standpoint? And I know what you're saying, Dave, because we morally did it before, and that was morally corrupt, that was morally wrong. But is it morally right to even bring them back to an environment that they're not used to just because we can? Or do we just let it go and then try to do better in the future as a human species?
So if you had the ability to bring back a species that we completely eradicated because of short-sightedness, overutilization of resources, whatever it is, you would not do that.
I would look forward. Same thing I always do, Dave. I would just look forward. I would look to the past. I would learn from it. Definitely learn from it. You don't want to do that type of thing again. But I would not look to the past to bring an animal back, even though it was a mistake to eradicate them to begin with. I would just have to look forward and then know that there's a bigger plan than what it is that I'm looking at, and then just go and see what the future has to hold. And then use my technology in other more fruitful and creative ways, as opposed to going backwards and bringing back something that we've already made extinct through natural selection.
Yeah, but I also see a little bit what Dave is saying, right? Because if we go with that particular mindset of, you know what, we're just looking forward right now. I gotta drill in the earth because I gotta get that oil. You know, if animals are going down, animals are going down. That is what it is, right? And then you said too, is it a mistake to necessarily wipe out an animal? I don't know if it's a mistake or not a mistake. I mean, it's not necessarily for me to judge. However, if I'm wiping out animals just for the sake of whatever interest it may be, commercial or non-commercial, moving forward from that is like, I don't know. It really comes down to what Dave was saying with the moral responsibility. It's like, oh, should I even be wiping out animals? Well, you know, I got to make some place where I can get my sugar cane. You know, I got to get some place where I can drill for my oil. Oh, yeah, the animals. And so that's kind of like the whole like revolution that we have now, right? Oh, we got to go green. We got to protect the environment because it's not going to last forever. So at what point is it okay to say that, you know what, these animals got to go? Or we take a step back to what Dave says, like, you know what, we should probably save the animals here because, you know, we're not the most important. But yet you said that because we're different and we can critically think, we could also argue to say our needs are more important than others because we have this ability.
Yes, I understand, but I think you brought up the perfect point already, is that there is absolutely no difference between conservation of animals and conservation of the environment. It is one and the same. So if we are making the conscious choice, say, hey, we are going to go green, we're going to use biodegradable options with our goods, we're going to use different sources, alternative sources of fuel to save energy so we can stop drilling, then I really think that makes sense. But we can't selectively choose when we want to be morally upstanding or when we want to make the right decision. There needs to be sort of a universal decision here with the environment. You know, we can't be good on one front, like, hey, you know what, we're not going to dump stuff into the ocean because that's really bad. But you know what, we're going to go ahead and level this entire jungle because we want to put 2 multiplexes up. It's so contradictory.
I agree with you. However, I don't think it's one or the other, right? There needs to be some leeway of some sort. It's like, oh yeah, we're definitely not going to ruin the environment. I mean, anything we do, us being here is ruining the environment.
I mean, that's
you know what I mean?
It's a fair
like
argument.
Just existing is ruining the environment.
But it's out of necessity, right? You know, we are a species of excess. You know, we have what we need, but we just continuously expand because we want more, right? We want. And it creates this endless pursuit of bigger, more expensive, nicer. So, you know, that's always been going on, as you've said. So now that we understand more about the environment, I think we have a greater responsibility to take even more steps to preserve it.
But you just had a contradiction right there. You said it's a necessity, and then you call it an excess. So it's not really a necessity at that point.
Well, I'll reel it back in again, is that what we need to survive, right? We need a home. We need stores, right, to provide us with food. We need farms, right? We don't necessarily need a lot of what we put out there. And I'm not saying that you can't have wants. Of course, everyone has to balance their wants and needs. And as a whole, humanity does a very poor job of that. Instead of working to conserve our natural resources, Elon Musk is taking us to Mars to colonize, right? Billions and billions of dollars. Where could that money be spent to protect the animals and conserve the environment, right?
Now, protecting the animals and preserving the environment, is that really about them, or is that more about us? Earlier, you called us the top species, but I would argue that if we're really the top species, how can we then turn around and say that we're dependent on these animals and this environment to survive? If we were gone, the animals and the environment would still survive without us. Supposedly, the animals in the environment were here before us, and they're supposed to be here after we're gone as well. So is this all just a play on self-preservation to begin with and not really about the animals and the environment?
Well, I mean, I suppose it could be. They probably were here long before us and will probably be here long after us. But again, that's because I think they function solely on their survival instincts.
They don't need us.
Maybe, maybe not. I mean, we don't necessarily understand how our interactions affect the environment, which may actually help them. And maybe some of our actions have preserved certain species from extinction unknowingly, by protecting certain lands, by having national parks, things of that nature. Maybe inadvertently global warming has saved certain species that otherwise would have perished. I mean, we don't understand these interactions, but I think there's a codependence, going back to what you said. You know, they do need us to some regard, to some respect, excuse me, and they need, we need them and they need us as well. It's a symbiotic relationship. As Stan would say, and he's not here today, it is the yin and the yang. It is both sides.
I'm going to have to agree with Rob on this one. I don't think they actually need us. Whether or not we're here, I think they'll be fine. Now, you can say some species might be able to flourish greater because we're here, but whether or not we're here, I think they'll be fine. Now, arguably, if we are here and they are not here, I don't know if we would be fine.
I don't think we would be.
Yeah, I would probably say that we would not be fine if the animals were not here.
And that's why there's the big push to try to save the environment and try to save the animals. I think it's more about us as opposed to it is about them.
Rob, that's an interesting take.
Oh, look at that. He full circled us right there. He said it's about the animals because it's about us.
That's cold-blooded. I can't. I'd like to think that there's a greater good out there. I'd like to think that we're doing things. We're not virtue signaling, right? That we're actually doing things because we care, right?
We care. Okay.
Rob's, we
that's
care.
definitely the history of man.
Yeah, because we care.
You know, but this is just the tip of the iceberg, right? For a lot of very sensitive topics with the environment, with animal conservation, preservation, right? You know, you bring up a valid point. I think maybe to some degree there is self-preservation in mind for almost everything that we do on this planet, and it's all just driven by money.
Well, no. I wouldn't necessarily say it's driven by money. I think that's just natural instinct of living organisms of, I do not want to die. Not necessarily just money, but I don't want to die.
Well, I think money plays into it tremendously
Oh,
as
absolutely.
well. You're not gonna,
but I don't think it's the only motivation. When you say, oh, it's because I think it's just instinctual.
Like, Mike, I got this new battery for my car. My car is going to be able to drive, 10,000 miles. I don't need gasoline anymore. You think the oil companies they're gonna like that? You think the entire world economy is going to immediately, sustain a change like that?
But if you think
it's
about
definitively not.
If you think about it, world economy, it's just a man-made thing anyways.
Yes,
Yeah.
but it's very delicately balanced. We've seen that. We've seen
With pandemic.
how very small changes can create drastic results. So if we immediately, money is what's going to be the big driver here. And there's going to be resistance to change. So despite the fact there's probably been engines that are sitting on shelves that can get thousands and thousands of miles a gallon that people have said, hey, we're going to buy this patent and we're going to shelve it because there are trillions of dollars in the oil industry right now. And they're going to say, you know what, I'm not going to be alive in 100 years. I'm going to build the biggest drill I can. I'm going to drill as deep as I can, and I'm going to make that money.
I agree. Absolutely. The motivation. But bringing it back to our point here, are we saving animals out of moral obligation or moral responsibility? Or, to Rob's point, are we saving animals to save ourselves and just call it moral responsibility?
I'm saving animals. You guys can do what you want.
Oh, all right. Well, once again, I want to preface that I love animals. I love the environment. But I also love saving myself, too. So, instinct, just from an instinct standpoint. Holistically, of course, shout out to Holistic Reverend who's not here today, but that's okay. So yeah, I would agree with Rob. Rob brought up a good point. He kind of full circled it, and so I'm just gonna have to. It's for you, Rob.
Thanks,
Big dubs for you.
Yes. I'll take my dubs when I can take them.
Like same. I know.
As you do, you just
I know
drop the wisdom.
it's not a full circle dub. I know. I got you, Dave. I see you.
Look, I'm not going to concede the point. I'm going to say you make some good points. I would
Okay.
I would pour a glass of water out for you, a glass of scotch here. But no, I agree. You bring some valid points to the table.
Right.
So.
What really sparked it is when you said that we're the superior species. We're the species on the top of the food chain. I don't understand how we could be when we're so dependent on other things that are around us in order to allow us to live when other animals just are not. Are we really on the top, or do we just think we're on the top?
I mean, my only response to that would be to refer you to the movie The Lion King. But no, you bring some valid points to the table. I got to give it to you.
All right. Well, I guess that's a conclusion of this episode then. I mean, unless you guys got some more points to add in.
No, I'm good.
I'm
All
good.
right. Well, this is the conclusion of episode 3 of the Motley Crew podcast. Once again, my name is Mike. We got Dave and RB here today. We're missing Stan from the other episodes, but he'll be back for the future episodes. And
It's not dead,
yeah,
Dave.
we'll see you guys in the next episode.